Hi, this is your host Subal Bhartia, and welcome to another episode of TFI Let's Talk. And today we have with us once again Tom Wilkie, VP of Technology at Grafana Labs. Tom, it's great to have you on the show.
Great to be here. Thank you for having me back.
Yeah, it's been a while. So first of all, of course, there are so many things to talk about. I need a lot of updates about Grafana Labs. So tell us a bit about what you folks have been keeping yourself busy with.
Yeah, it's been a busy couple of years. We've really kind of completed the original kind of vision that we set out to build 4 years ago. So with the launch of Mimir, the new horizontally scalable time series database, and now we're getting started on kind of a whole new set of projects with our recent open source release of Grafana OnCall, our kind of instant response tool. So super busy, super exciting. The team's growing, company's doing really well, and yeah, it's also nice to be back traveling again, visiting customers on site. And we're a fully remote team, so I've had the opportunity to actually meet the fantastic people I've been working with for the past 2 years for the first time.
What I also want to talk about is that the focus of Grafana Labs, because the market is evolving very fast. I see a lot of companies, because it's not about you're solving one problem and things overlap so much. So if I may ask you today, what is focus of Grafana? What is specific problem are you trying to solve for cloud native or modern infrastructure world?
Of course, yeah. So we're 100% focused on the observability use cases at Grafana Labs. We see our mission really to kind of bring a big tent vision to observability, allowing users to pick and choose the best tools and compose them together into a kind of coherent and easy to use observability tool.
And when we talk about observability, once again, as I said, it's just the things overlap so much, we can start. I don't want to even open the can of worms. So I'll just simplify things and I'll ask you, how would you define observability? Because, today the tags are used in so many things. What you will define as observability, what it's not. And if we can also talk about the importance of observability in modern, landscape.
Yeah, so it's a bit of a moving target, right? And people are constantly trying to redefine. What I will say is it is definitely not any one tool or technology. Observability is not just metrics and logs and traces. I see observability really as the practice of kind of understanding the behavior of an application and of some infrastructure, shedding light on what's going on inside the box and really helping people do that. Observability is important, for a lot of the same reasons that Kubernetes and containers and CI/CD are important, right? We've moved into a world where developers are the new kingmakers, and organizations care more and more about the productivity of their engineering teams. And observability is really just one of the aspects of helping engineering teams be better at their jobs and making their jobs easier.
It's really important when you say, to make developers' job easier, because to be honest, in the end, there are two things that matter. Is like the end customers that the companies are serving, all the tech stack that we talk about is important for us because we love technologies, but they would not want to talk about because taking so much time, the time that developers should spend in writing business application. Second is that in the cloud native world, things are getting so complicated, and a lot of things are moving to developers' pipeline. That it's we are already seeing burnouts are happening. Folks are quitting jobs, so we are adding more things in their pipeline. So when you do talk about making things easier for developers, let's look at observability once again, which is more or less like if you look at once again developers. How does observability itself makes their job easier? We'll talk about how you are making developers' job easier second, but let's talk about how observability enables them to do their job better.
Yeah, I mean, observability is a very broad general practice, right? So I'd say there's observability done well and there's observability done badly. What we're trying to avoid is the observability done badly. At the end of the day, I would kind of point to a lot of organizations that don't really know what's going on in their production systems. Right, so observability is about giving them the tools and the techniques to ask questions about what is my SLO performance? Are my customers really happy? What is the utilization of my resources? What's driving that bill? What are where are the software packages that are out of date? All of these kind of questions that you can provide answers to with a lot of the common kind of observability practices and tools. What we're trying to do, I know you want to talk about the general practice of observability, but I want to talk about Grafana. So what we're trying to do is give them kind of a beautiful UX to do that within, right? And make it a real pleasure to use these tools and make it enjoyable. Give them tools that engineers don't dread using, that they really look forward to. And at the same time, making the whole system easier to use, more composable, just more pleasurable.
Now let's go back to the tech part. Earlier you mentioned two open source projects. One is OnCall and second was Mimea. So I want to just go a bit detail about each of that. So you can pick and choose whichever your favorite one. I'm putting in a hard spot there. And let's talk about this project one by one.
Yeah, of course. So I'm going to start with Mimir because this one's very close to my heart. It's our kind of our iteration and improvement on the Cortex open source project, which is a project I started 5 years ago. So we've kind of taken Cortex and we've done a series of pretty cool improvements to make it more scalable, more performant, easier to use, and then released that as open source. I think the big headline for Mimir is that we've tested it up to a billion active series. This is a pretty massive workload that we've run in pretty heavy usage, and shown that it not only scales quite easily to that, but also performs very well at that scale. I think one of the cool things about showing that it's so scalable is like it really removes the need to have to worry that you're going to hit any fundamental limits if you adopt Mimir. This thing will scale to meet even the largest workloads. And what's more, like the performance it has at this scale really allows you to ask questions that in other tools would basically fail. You can do queries over very, very high cardinality data and get almost instant results from Mimir. In other tools, they would just time out or never return. And finally, the ability to have such a large scale makes it possible for you to kind of bring together data and metrics from your entire organization into a single place. And then you can kind of draw really interesting correlations and insights by comparing, for instance, infrastructure level metrics to application level metrics and get these previously unobtainable insights, which is kind of cool.
Excellent. Now let's talk about OnCall.
Yes. So we briefly touched earlier actually on SLOs. And I want to also mention those because like part of our, we've completed this kind of LGTM arc at Grafana Labs where we've built these best of breeds, logs, metrics, and traces projects and launched them as open source. And now a lot of our kind of focus is shifting to thinking about the kind of operational lifecycle that teams are having to go through. So OnCall is kind of the first step in here. And we wanted to build a modern, open source, composable kind of tool for managing your alerts and your pages and your escalations and your kind of on-call schedules. We wanted that to be open source and we wanted it to be integrated heavily into Grafana. So this is something, everyone who uses any of the existing tools for this, they're all using Grafana as well. So bringing these two things together makes a lot of sense. And making it OnCall really helps kind of disrupt the market here and kind of shake things up and modernize the place. But the reason OnCall is so important to us is because, I used to be on call up until about 2 years ago. And we practice DevOps at Grafana Labs. So all of our engineers are on call. And having an easy to use and accessible tool with modern kind of chat ops functionality is just a pleasure. Like it really de-stresses the whole on-call scenario, especially, on-call can be quite annoying, can be quite of a bane to a lot of developers' existence. So giving them pleasurable, kind of easy to use tools that meet them where they're at and help them kind of understand what's going on really kind of de-stresses the whole situation.
What is the story behind the name OnCall?
So the story behind the name OnCall is we actually met a startup called Amixer. It was about 18 months ago, I think now. And we really liked the project they were building and, meeting of minds, they decided to join Grafana Labs. And that was where the genesis of the OnCall project came from. We thought, it needed a new name, needed something that was a bit more accessible, a bit easier to understand. And honestly, we practice a kind of, call a spade kind of approach in Grafana Labs. So you use OnCall to manage your on-call schedules. When you're on call, you're getting paged if there's a problem. OnCall is a tool that makes sure your on-call systems work correctly. So we just thought we'd call it OnCall. It made a lot of sense.
Can you also talk about when we look at these two projects, what is happening is that if you look at, I'm just talking about Cloud Native or Kubernetes in specifically, early days, the adopters were like tech companies, tech behemoths who always, the early adopters. Now, these technologies, every company out there, as we used to say, every company has to be a software company. And then we say, every company should have a cloud strategy. Now, every company should be cloud, the tech stack should be cloud native. So what is also happening is that the user base is becoming less and less technical because those every company has to be, and also there's a big crisis of talent. Skilled folks are also not there. So we have to lower the barrier of entry also. So the teams, even depending on what skill set they have, they should be able to leverage all these cloud native technologies. So can you also talk about these two projects that you announced, and also the whole approach Grafana has towards observability, how you're making it more democratizing it, more accessible to a lot of organizations who are not tech behemoths?
That's a really good question. So, we've shown, I think, as an organization, we're really great at launching and maintaining these really kind of sophisticated, scalable, exciting distributed systems. But one of the criticisms of this kind of technology is it can be a bit unapproachable to someone who maybe doesn't have the time or the expertise to get the best out of it. And that's our strategy as a business. That, distinct from how we like to contribute to the open source community, our strategy as a business is to make these technologies approachable, right? Make them easy to use and really appeal to those users that don't have that time and expertise to install Grafana, install Prometheus, install some exporters and the agent and build some dashboards and compose it all together themselves, which can take, days or hours or days, depending on your level of expertise. If you want to just get a turnkey solution that works out of the box, that's Grafana Cloud. We've gone and built in all of that opinionation, all of that ease of use, all of that integration between all these technologies, and really made it so within a small number of minutes, you can have a fully running observability system. And that's really the mission of our products. And I think this also as a strategy, I really like this because it doesn't pit open source against commercial. Open source is a really big part of that community, a really big part of that strategy rather, and it pays for us to invest in open source and build communities that appeal to the experts and that appeal to the people who have that expertise. And there's still a huge market and huge business for us in taking those technologies and making them opinionated, making them easy to use. So that's really kind of our approach, and that's what cloud and the enterprise stack is all about. And I think they're the easiest to use kind of open source composable observability stacks out there.
Thanks for talking about, I especially like that part where you talk about commercialization and open source, because that's really important for the sustainability of open source. Now, I also want to talk about some activities, which is like, community events. So one such thing that you folks did was Grafana Conline, a nice name there, which was kind of one of the largest gathering of the Grafana community.
Grafana Conline is the online version of GrafanaCon. When we started planning it at the beginning of the year, it really wasn't clear to us whether we could do it in person or not, hence the online. But we really want to get back to meeting our community in person. And we're really hoping kind of towards the end of the year, we'll be hosting in-person events again and able to kind of meet our community face to face. It's really important to us. But about GrafanaCon and Grafana Conline, these are the Grafana community, right? So what I think is particularly exciting about GrafanaCon is it's more than just observability. Grafana is used in so many other industries and use cases. There's a huge kind of movement for using Grafana for kind of analytics and BI. A huge number of people using Grafana for kind of IoT and edge style use cases. And GrafanaCon is the place where all of those interests are represented. So you'll have talks from people growing strawberries in containers in the middle of Paris to talks from people doing traditional observability on Kubernetes. And it's such a kind of a big tent, right, of many use cases. It's really exciting. We also use GrafanaCon every year to launch the next major version of Grafana. It's kind of a big, exciting celebration moment for us where we can reflect on the year's progress we've made with the project. And in Grafana 9, which was released at GrafanaCon this year, we really had three big kind of headline features, right? So the big one, and the big one for me in particular, was a massively improved kind of graphical Prometheus querying experience. So you no longer need to be an expert in PromQL to use Prometheus. You can just drag and drop and click some drop downs and really start to get insights from your metrics much easier and much quicker. And we built the same experience for Loki as well. So the same counts for logs. We also finally kind of made generally available and production ready our unified alerting. And this is the next iteration of Grafana's alerting, which is heavily Prometheus inspired and really production grade, and makes things like sophisticated SLO style alerting, for instance, much, much easier. and allows you to manage your Prometheus alerts inside Grafana, which is also pretty cool. And then finally, we've done a whole host of UX and ease of use improvements across the entire platform. So there's a new navigation instance. There's a command palette like in Visual Code, Visual Studio Code. So there's a lot of great improvements that have made Grafana more accessible and easy to use. Yeah, that's what GrafanaCon's about. It's one of my favorite events. It was we used to host them in Amsterdam, and I'm hopefully we'll go back to Amsterdam one day. But that was actually where Grafana Labs announced the acquisition of my company 4.5 years ago. So that's one of the reasons why I look at it so fondly.
Tom, thank you so much for taking time out today and talk, of course, about the event, the whole observability landscape, how it's evolving and changing, and what Grafana Labs is doing. And as you also mentioned that you want to talk about Grafana Labs also. And the whole point is we can talk about problems all day, but the most important thing is that what we are doing to solve those problems. So thanks for talking about the product that you folks are building, and it's not just commercial projects, it's also open source projects, which is also involves a lot of larger community, and also give them confidence that they can really rely on these projects because there is a project backing those products. So thanks for sharing those insights as well. Thanks for sharing about the event. And as I said, I would love to attend Grafana Labs events in future whenever we go back to physical event or online. But I really loved the discussion today, and we should talk more frequently, not every 6 months. But I really appreciated the discussion. Thank you.
Thank you so much. It was great to see you again.